quest for a repeat has sadly ended for the New York Liberty as their season just came to an end in round one of the playoffs against the Phoenix Mercury. Joining me now to talk about that and other hot topics in the sports world is our dear friend Geoff Magliocchetti. Geoff, welcome back. Hope you had a great summer.
Mike, thank you for having me on. Hope your summer was likewise great.
It was great and it was fast, but here we are in the fall. We're going to talk basketball. Let's start with the Liberty. They lost to the Mercury in a best-of-3 series, ending their season. They didn't get swept. They at least made it to a third game. But with that in mind, was this a series that could have gone either way, or based on what you saw, was it not meant to be for the Liberty again this year?
It sounds like a cop out, but yes and no in a sense, because the first thing anyone's going to talk about when it comes to this Liberty season is the myriad of injuries they had all year long. Their nightly injury reports routinely resembled starting fives that would, make the playoffs, even if they weren't five women technically. But this was a tough break for New York this year, who lost almost every single member of their starting five to extended stretches this year. Brianna Stewart, for example, misses 13 games from late July into August, during which New York went 5-8 in that stretch. Sabrina Ionescu had toe injury that forced her to miss some late games. John Paul Jones was injured in June. So yeah, there was a plenty of injuries this year. But New York would be the first to admit that it was not all injuries that did them in this time around. There were several frustrating incidents that permeated throughout this year. They allowed too many second chance points, for example. Rebounding proved to be an issue. Head coach Sandy Brondello frequently cited the physicality battle that New York would constantly, find themselves on the wrong end upon. So New York has always been, New York would be the first to admit that this season went far beyond just the injuries. And what's unfortunate, though, is that they did battle to the very end, particularly Brianna Stewart. What's particularly ironic about the way this New York season ended was that all year long, the battle cry, among the fan base anyway, appeared to be, just wait until we're healthy, just wait until they're healthy, just wait until they're at full strength. And ironically enough, it was an injured player in Brianna Stewart who had endured a sprained MCL during game one of the Phoenix series. It was she who rose up to the occasion and really pressed things forward for New York with a 30.9 rebound performance in game three that featured her scoring the final 14 points of the Liberty season, being the only New Yorker to score in the fourth quarter of that game. So, again, this was an interesting year for New York, an obviously disappointing year for New York. But there are desires within this organization on the team to run it back. Brandon Stewart immediately committed to moving forward with this team over the past few years. This was her third year in New York. Over the past 2 years, she signed a team-friendly deal in 2024 that allowed New York a little more leeway in terms of what they could do during the offseason. And this time around, she was granted core designation, which allows teams exclusive negotiating rights in exchange for a 1 year supermax contract. So there's going to be a lot of uncertainty when it comes to this WNBA offseason, which makes this defeat even more brutal to bear. But at the same time, there are desires within this organization to run it back. New York still trusts each other, still believes in each other. Brianna Stewart gave a very heartfelt plea in favor of head coach Sandy Brondello sticking around. So there is a strong desire to run it back with this group. It hurts for the time being, but New York is interested to see what it can do with a full strength group, which of course will likely include Benijah Laney Hamilton, who missed this entire season with an injury after enduring off-season surgery. So interesting to see what happens. But of course, first things first, the signing of a collective bargaining agreement, which will no doubt dominate the headlines of women's basketball once the WNBA finals wrap.
Now, the NBA preseason kicks off in about a week and a half. Knicks have a couple of games against the Sixers, and then it's off to the Timberwolves, the Wizards, and the Hornets. How do the Knicks look as of now, and should we take these preseason games at face value?
Michael, say this. I kind of want to break this on your program, but I think Jalen Brunson, Carl Anthony Towns are going to make this roster. I think that they're going. I think that the top five is spoken for, but the Knicks do have an interesting dilemma to work with, a welcome dilemma, if you will. New York really spent this offseason not with marquee signings, not with headlining moves. Of course, they've always lingered in the discussion, be it for Giannis, be it for LeBron James, over whether they over their metropolitan over their futures. Whenever there's a big free agent on the move, it seems the Knicks are always in that rumor mill. And over the past 2 years, there's always been, a sense of disappointment. They never really got into that group. Although they did succeed last year with the additions of Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns. But this time around, New York had a decidedly quiet offseason, mostly deciding to focus on depth scoring, depth stars at this point. They went out and signed Jordan Clarkson. They went out and signed Gershon Yabusele. So those are two additions that are really going to boost the bench scoring, which finished dead last by a wide margin in last year's scoring department. So interesting to see what the Knicks will do there. And over last week, the Knicks really went on a bit of a frenzy in terms of free agent signing. They brought back Landry Shamet. They brought in Malcolm Brogdon, joining Clarkson as a previous winner of the Sixth Man of the Year award. And they brought in several others, guys like Garrison Matthews, guys like Alex Len. And this is really telling of where the Knicks organization is at this point. Role players and guys who want to really succeed, want to be the missing piece in a championship puzzle. They want to come to New York at this point. So many off seasons pass. How many times so many trade deadlines pass so recently? How many times have from a Knicks perspective they said things like, well, maybe we could bring in Russell Westbrook. Maybe we could take a look at the buyout market. Maybe we could bring in guys like an aging Westbrook, for example. That's not the case this time around. Experienced veteran role players are coming in and they want to be a part of this organization. So that's really going to be an interesting subplot to watch this preseason. Now, the Knicks, in their due diligence to get back to the NBA's penthouse, to compete among the Final Four, and to compete and to take that next step, they have done so through a strong financial sense. They've been very smart financially. They've stayed out of the restrictive second salary apron, which would very much hinder their opportunities to move forward, their opportunities to make moves and whatnot. And as we're seeing teams who have fallen into the apron before, look at the Boston Celtics, for example. They had to give away certain members of their championship squad from not too long ago, and more could be on the way. We don't know what's going to happen to, say, Jaylen Brown. They've already had to say goodbye to Kristaps Porzingis, say goodbye to Drew Holiday. So we've seen the aftershocks of falling into the apron. The Knicks have avoided that. And so we look at this roster right now. It'll be interesting to see who wins these roster battles. Because one thing that stands out to me, one thing that's very interesting to me, shortly after re-signing Shamit, they go out and get themselves Brogdon. And I don't think you sign, and I'm not trying to speak for Leon Rose or anybody, but I don't think you sign an incumbent Death Star like Shamit and then you go out and bring in an accomplished talent off the bench like Brogdon and not have a desire to keep them both. This could lead to a trade at some point, and it could lead the Knicks to part ways with prized prospects such as Pacom Dadier, such as Tyler Kolek. If you look at the roster right now, perhaps the most tradable, the most desirable asset at this point is perhaps Miles McBride, who has really come into his own over the past couple of years, turned himself into a two-way star. But what the Knicks are building is interesting, and that's what you got to look for this preseason. Look for the depth battles, because I feel like we've spoken about this when it comes to Liberty, for example. They proved it perfectly last year. A supposed super team is only goes as far and is only as deep as its role players and depth stars. Look what the Liberty was able to accomplish last year with players like Kayla Thornton rising to the occasion, players like Niara Sabali rising to the occasion. It's the same thing in New York this time around. They have a very strong starting five, and now they're bringing the complementary depth stars to work with them. Guys like Clarkson, guys like Yabusele, guys like Brogdon, and guys like Landry Shamet, and perhaps even Miles McBride. So, and can't forget Mitchell Robinson as well, an experienced starter who's currently supposed to back up Karl Anthony Towns at the center spot. So, very interesting for New York right now. They're at a very interesting place on the franchise timeline. Veterans want to come in and be that missing piece. And those battles will be very intriguing to watch over this preseason slate, which gets underway on October 1st against Philadelphia in Abu Dhabi.
So switching over to the NFL, the Jets are 0-3, the Giants are 0-3. I don't even want to talk about the Jets. They're just too frustrating. But as for the Giants, people are already tired of Russell Wilson, and they want to see what Jackson Dart can do. Is he the right choice at this point?
It's hard to say at this point because you don't want to throw Jackson Dart into the proverbial fire because the schedule maker did the Giants absolutely no favors at this point. Having hosted Kansas City this week, now they have to go in and face the Los Angeles Chargers. A bit of a reprieve comes in a couple weeks. I believe they play the Saints, as a matter of fact, who looked absolutely woebegone against Seattle on Sunday. But then they have a couple matchups with the mighty Philadelphia Eagles. But at this point, we're getting closer to, a point of no return where it's like, how much can you actually trust Jackson Dart at this point? How much can you continue to throw Russell Wilson out there without Jackson Dart losing any confidence in himself? We've seen fleeting appearances of Dart over the past couple weeks, but they don't seem timely. They don't seem to be done with winning sense in mind. Because when it look at yesterday's game against Kansas City, Giants go into the red zone, and that would be a perfect time to run an RPO, to run play action, to run with the quarterback. Instead of using Jackson Dart, they're using Russell Wilson to run these plays. That seems like a perfect opportunity to place Dart in the game. So the Giants have to make a decision at some point. You have to embrace the fact that, look, I know it's only 3 weeks in the year, but the playoffs are probably more of a fleeting possibility, more of a pipe dream at this point. You look at what they've been able to accomplish. The Giants have some respectable losses. They played Kansas City fairly well yesterday. They limited Patrick Mahomes to 2 rushing yards after he had 123 over the first 2 weeks, most among quarterbacks in that span. They limited Mahomes to 6.1 yards an attempt, lowest he's had so far in 3 games this season. So there were things to be proud of for the Giants yesterday, but they can't really relish it because the offense is just stuck in this rut at this point. And Russell Wilson, credit to him, did a solid job in week 2 against Dallas, who, staving off the cult of Dart for at least a week out there. But, as we discovered yesterday, that game probably said more about the Dallas defense than it did what Russell Wilson has to offer at this point, unfortunately, from a Big Blue perspective. So what the Giants need to do, they need to get some semblance of a plan going. They need to put themselves at some point of no return. You have to put Dart in, and you have to leave him in at this point. You have to designate a date where things become research and development. You need to get him into the game. Now that will require, some semblance of an offensive line as well. You got to get Dart in a place where, his career won't end as quickly as it began. So I'm interested to see what the Giants do at this point, and I'm interested to see what sort of deadline the Giants set for themselves, at least metaphorically, as they press forward into a very, very tough schedule.
Anything else is an upgrade at this point, Geoff. Thanks so much for taking the time today. We'll talk soon, brother.
Mike, appreciate your time and insight. Keep up the good work, sir. You and Pam do great things.
Thank you. You as well. Well, coming up, a Kane University coach is getting inducted into the school's Athletics Hall of Fame. We'll talk to Jody Valenti when we come back.